Assholes can be a real problem when you're welding. On a related note, I figured out how I'm going to finish this horse sculpture that I was sourcing help from in an earlier video. Crater cracks, or end cracks, or sometimes shrinkage cracks, or star cracks, or stars, but my favorite term is assholes, and that's pretty much an industry standard. And they occur when you're welding along, you start your weld, and you're putting in a bunch of heat, a bunch of material, and you just break it off, and you don't fill the very end of your weld with a little bit of material, and you break off the heat very quickly. So rather than having a slow gradual cooling, it's all trying to cool at once, and as molten metal cools, it shrinks. And so I drew this. I don't know if this is going to help any non-welders, but you start here and you're welding along, welding along, welding along, and if you just break it off, no matter what process you're using, you aren't giving this a chance to cool down slowly. So the outside of that puddle, it's concave too, it's not convex. This whole bead is like a little caterpillar lying on top of the material, or like if you're piping icing or putting toothpaste on your toothbrush, you've got that convex little worm on top of your plate. But here, you don't. This is going to be flush to the material, or sometimes even concave into the base metal, which is even worse. And that is where the molten material is trying to cool, but is pulling against the outside that's already solidified. And since it's liquid still, it kind of pulls apart from each other, and it leaves a perfect little asshole. Little hole there. And it does sometimes have those whiskers, the little cracks coming out from around it. And that's where it gets the name star crater. And they aren't just on the surface, they can go deep into the weld. If you were to cut that in cross section, it'll go all the way through the weld material that you just laid down, whatever rod you've burned off, whatever filler material you've added. And sometimes in severe cases, it can propagate through the base metal, because that's what you're doing when you're welding. Usually it's a joint, it's a fit up with two different pieces, and you're melting that parent metal and adding a filler rod. And so if it's hot, that crack can go all the way through it. So it's that uneven cooling and shrinkage stresses at the end of the weld. See that? I can see it starting already. There it is. See how I tried to pull away, but this was all solid while this was still molten, and so it was able to pull away from itself. And there's the little thing. And I've got them all over my horse sculpture, all over, because like I said, I didn't care about my welds on this. This is just fun welding. I mean, I'm just hammering that thing and I'm throwing filler rod in. I'm welding, I think I saw some 14 gauge material to also like 35 thousandths. Very, very thin to very, very thick. I am actually literally, where is it? Using 1/4 inch round stock, stainless round stock as a filler rod sometimes. It's been fun. Back to the assholes. If you want to avoid it, you just, rather than breaking your arc away immediately, you give it a chance to cool down slowly. So if you're TIG welding, like I am, rather than just letting off on the pedal, which is a rheostat, you let off gradually, and you can see the arc dim, and you can see the puddle cool from the outside in. You give it a little bit of time, then you hold your torch over it for some time to let the argon pass over it. That gives a little extra amount of protection and a little bit of time before it cools to room temperature. If you're stick welding or MIG welding, you can backstep, where you go to the end of your weld and like hold it for a second. Sometimes you can jog it in if you're MIG welding, or you just kind of like whip it a little bit and backstep and then break off. So it gives you a chance to fill in the weld so it's not so concave. If it's not concave, you've got less geometric stress concentration. That extra material absorbs the contraction. Cooling happens more uniformly over that cross section. The big thing is don't overheat your weld. Sometimes you can't help it, but the best thing you can do is just try to manage your heat and not pull the heat away all at once, and make sure there's enough filler at the end. If you do get a star crack, you usually have to grind them out, because like I said, they can propagate through the material, and if you don't get it all out and you've got a little bit of a void in there where you have welded and there are stresses on those two parts, that crack will open right back up and sometimes travel the entire length of the weld, the weld joint. I think that would be considered a cold crack. The hot cracks are what happen, like I just said, when the contraction rates are different and it's cooling down and it was hot and it cools down too quickly. That's a hot crack. But if it's already cold and you've just locked a bunch of stresses in, pulling against each other, and then one day those stresses finally decide to overcome the tensile strength of whatever they're holding, ping, that's where cracks occur when there's not even any heat. There was heat in the past, but everything just gave because you have uneven stresses put into the piece. I'm not grinding out my crater cracks, I'm just welding over them. Come X-ray me. Building slowly. Hold my torch over there for a while. No more assholes. I took everyone's advice, and here's where I ground down everything on the haunches. I just ran some more weld bead in there to give it a little bit more character again. And then I went through and I tried to repair most of the crater cracks, but I didn't get all of them. Of course, it's just loaded with assholes. It's lousy with assholes.